Bruins Beat is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat. It's September 19th. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That's Conor Ryan. We're presented by our good friends over at Fanduel. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. I am doing great, and we have no shortage of things to talk about today because a little piece of Bruins news dropped on Monday. We were waiting kind of all off season to see who would be the final Bruins assistant coach. Comes out on Monday that it's John McLean, local guy from Wakefield, played at BC, longtime head coach at Malden Catholic, recent head coach at Austin Prep, worked with the Bruins last year in a skills and development role, and he now gets promoted to the bench. So good for him. And I think it also shows that they have a guy on staff who his focus is going to be development. And I think if they're going to be having a lot of younger guys come in the lineup, not a bad hire. What do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be essential, whether you look at not just the influx of, you hope, younger players, but you're looking at quite a few guys on this roster. You've already talked about them countless times, but, you know, a guy like Frederick, a guy like Lauko, guys who are already on this roster that they want to take another step forward and emphasizing that development, that skating and skills is going to be essential to it. So it felt like there was going to be someone like a McLean, you know, like a Kim Brandville, those kinds of coaches in terms of guys that are trying to unlock another gear out of these players. Montgomery already more or less said that Joe Sacco is shifting his role to be more focused on the defense. Chris Kelly's looking at power play this year. So a few roles getting shifted around now that John Gruden left during the offseason to go coach the Toronto Marlies in the Maple Leaf system. But it makes plenty of sense for you look at just how I think the coaching roles have shifted, what the Bruins need as they kind of revamp and retool this roster. Focusing on a guy like McLean makes plenty of sense. Great beard as well.
Great beard. And, it's funny, like Bob Essenza is goalie Bob. He's like the goalie whisperer. Maybe John will be like the skater John. He's like the skating whisperer or the skill whisperer. Trent Frederick's going to start dangling through guys and going top shelf every shift. And it's like, oh, John McLean at it again with Trent Frederick.
I've only seen about 2 or 3 diehard GIFs so far. So good people are keeping that contained right now. So as they should. But the big news over the weekend, and this was very controversial. Everybody had a different take on this. But Shocking. The new jerseys, I know, right? The new jerseys were released in the Logan Fashion Show. How was that? How was the environment there? They wouldn't let you fly the plane, unfortunately. I thought that was kind of disappointing. I thought, just a quick little loop around. Even like I don't have to take off. Like just put me on like the Ted Williams Tunnel. Like do a little just drive through there and go through south a little bit, show off. Like I got the JetBlue plane. Didn't work out, alas.
The wings scraping the front of like the Broadway. That wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, that was disappointing. Couldn't fly the plane, but first fashion show I've ever been to. I tried to get my locked in composure. Like I was at New York Fashion Week and I just see a bunch of Bruins sweaters and all that stuff walking up and down the runway. Don't know what to do. I felt like I was like Ricky Bobby. I'm like, do I have a look like this? What do I do? But it was entertaining, interesting. It'll be the first of I think many very different events this year for the Centennial season. But of course, I think what everyone focuses on, not on the merch, on the jerseys. They're interesting. I think what I usually do is I think they're pretty solid. I think, again, you can only do so much with them. I know a lot of the discourse, I think it revolves around the striping, especially on the sleeves. But how I always view it, even if you're on the fence about jerseys and sweaters, wait till they're on the ice in the full garb. I feel like that's when you really kind of see how it pops out there. It's one thing to wear it as you're walking through the concourse at the Garden or whatever. When you see it on the ice with all the full gear on, I think that's how you can best kind of judge it out there.
Yeah, and the aesthetic of the new logo on the ice and things like that. I agree. I think there are too many stripes on the arms of the home and the aways. I think that's my one point of contention with them. Some people were like, the gold doesn't pop the way it should, and it's like, I think that's just a lighting thing. I'm curious to sort of see that in person on the ice, how that looks on TV. But the stripes, I don't know. That was my one area where it's like, I think you could have went to 3 stripes instead of 6. I think that, I don't know. That's my take on it.
I mean, I believe the stripes, it's 6 in honor of their Stanley Cup championship. So I understand why they did it.
Okay, then I get that.
But you could do it in other ways. Like I liked how the alternate jersey, which I'm really excited to see how that looks once you have the helmet, the gloves, the pants, all that stuff with it. How it has like the 6 championship years inside the collar, and it's in like the Massachusetts sign kind of format and how they have it. So there's ways you can incorporate the 6 Stanley Cups without having like these big blocks more or less on your arms. But again, I digress. We'll see how it is once we get on the ice.
Also, Connor, we're not math guys, but if you put 3 stripes on one arm and 3 stripes on the other, you get to 6. I think that could work too. 3 plus 3, 3 times 2. I think that's 6. So maybe that could also, I think that could also potentially do it. With my math cap on, the math cap is on. But I like them. I do. I don't have any terrible problems. I mean, the stripes is something I think we can all get over. I like the logo they went with. I think they went the right direction on them. I think the Bruins are one of those cool teams where they're not like the Red Wings where like there's not much you can do, but they're not like the Coyotes or the Panthers who are like, these eccentric small market teams. Like you can be creative with the Bruins without stepping so far outside the box. Like you can be creative without just completely like blowing everything up. The colors are the same, everything like that. I also think like they'd had those home and aways since 07, 08 was their first year with those. Like,
I believe so.
I think that, it's been a long time. It's a new era. It's kind of like what the Patriots have done. The Brady era had their jerseys and then Brady leaves. You get new jerseys. I think, you look at Bergeron, Chara, Krejci, Rask, they're all gone. It's a new era, Now, the Patriots, I hate their home jerseys. So those I'm not a fan of. I like the red ones.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, yes. I thought you were talking about the actual. Yeah. Those no. Time.
I mean, the blue ones, the blues they wear. I don't like those. Those are, not up to par. But these I like. I like these, do you know if these are going to stick past this year? Have they said anything about that yet?
I don't believe so. I think especially the home and away are just going to be for this year. Maybe the alternative, if they're really popular, maybe they throw them in the rotation, kind of like how the big gold B one we've seen. That one I think was only supposed to be a year or two, and that stuck around as well. But I believe the regular home and aways for this year are just this year.
It's funny because I was saying this to someone this weekend. The Bruins have had a lot of really good sweaters over the last 4 or 5 years that you'd love to see come back. You look at like the Pooh Bear last year, you look at the yellow jerseys they wore in the COVID year that they wore at Lake Tahoe, the Winter Classic jerseys,
like 5 games.
Yeah, they barely wore them. And I thought those were so good. I loved those. Those were awesome. And they've had a lot of banger jerseys. And I would love to see some of those kind of come back at different times, in future years. Obviously, this year is the 100th year. You're using what you're using. But I just think that they've been fortunate. I think the Bruins are one of the fortunate teams that, the colors are good. The jerseys work. The designs have been good over the years. The logos, all that. And I like the innovation on these. So, and the alternates, by the way, are awesome. I love those. Those are great. So I'm excited to see what they look like this year. I think everyone's excited to see those on the ice and all that stuff. But another thing that was happening this weekend was the Prospects Challenge up in Buffalo. Bruins went 1-2 through the 3 games. And it's funny, I was reading Mark Diver this past weekend, who's knows everything about the Providence Bruins inside and out. But he had a story on Matthew Poitras, and Poitras kind of his development and how he was looking, and obviously the Bruins staff was very high on him. Langenbrunner, Evan Gold, the whole crew there, and it's interesting. Like we always say, they're barren at center in the prospect system, and they kind of are. But it feels like he could actually be someone that, not this year making the team. I don't think he's making the team this year. Not ready yet. But down the road, could be a guy that they look towards as, hey, maybe this is a top 6 center. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's probably, when you look at the team's need at center, you look at his playmaking capabilities, his production, especially last year in the OHL. He's arguably probably the most intriguing guy you have in the system. I mean, Lohrei, if he hits, not a lot of 6'4" guys that can move the puck like he can, so he's right up there as well. But I think when you look at just how desperately this team needs a center to pop, and it's not to say they need him to, again, don't need him to be Bergeron or Krejci. You'd love for that to be the case, but if he is a capable guy that in the NHL level can give you 45, 50 points and build into a role there, there's a lot to like about what he brings. And again, he's not as dynamic, he's not as good of a skater as a guy like Beecher. He's not maybe as dynamic offensively as a Lysell, but you listen to all these different, player development coordinators, coaches, GMs, Langenbrunner, McQuaid, everyone, they all mention, the skill set that he has, it's tough to really, learn. It's all like his on ice IQ, processing ability, the way he reads plays, how he gets inside ice. And I think that's what sticks out about him. I remember watching him in development camp. The one that stuck out is the passings there. Obviously, you don't have 79 assists in 61 games in the OHL without having that playmaking capabilities. But what stood out to me during dev camp is that instead of, for a guy with that kind of playmaking style, you'd imagine he'd be like on the outside looking for seams. He would always, drive towards the net, collapse the defense, and then he would have that wherewithal in that split second to then get a little backhand dish, for an easy chance, what have you. Like, that's something I think you really can't teach. That's just, a naturally aggressive playmaker, which seems like it's, a weird way to kind of phrase it, but he has that skill set and that need to make plays happen as opposed to letting the play develop and capitalizing. He makes it himself. So again, as you said, I think the Bruins are going to give him a good look this camp, just because he's in that really unfortunate kind of spot where it's either the NHL, the OHL. If he had free reign, it would make so much sense to just throw him into the AHL and kind of learn on the fly there. If he goes back to the OHL, of course, it's more games, more reps. He's probably going to put up a crap ton of points.
I'm going to say a lot of stats this winter.
Yeah. So, he's still going to develop in that regard, but you probably want to push and get more of that development acceleration with a year in Providence. It's not going to be the case. So I'm sure they're going to give him a good look to see. Again, they probably don't think he's ready quite yet, but if he's all of a sudden getting to the preseason games and he's lighting up and you have to give him a long look, even if he doesn't make the team, which still seems really unlikely, it'd be a great learning experience for him just to get those reps anyway. So he's definitely a guy I think you have to watch during camp, just because he's, again, you look at how barren the system has been for top 6 centers or even just capable NHL centers over the last, decade, right? Like you really haven't had any of them. He at least offers a lot of promise in terms of, what the production, but also just the way he plays, like the way he processes the game. It's something that's really, really hard to teach. It makes him a really unique prospect in that regard.
All right, quick second here to tell you about our good friends over at Fanduel. Snap into action this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Again, that's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. Again, FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Yeah, I just think the hockey sense element is what intrigues me most. You just look at, to be a top 6 player in the NHL, the hockey sense has to be there. The hockey sense is a must. I think that's one of the biggest things that separates top 6 guys from bottom 6 guys, that hockey sense. And he seems to have it from, everything that's been said about him. And as you said, I mean, if he really lights it up in the preseason this year, my guess is he still goes back to the OHL, but think of the hype that's going to be around him next training camp. And suddenly, if you have this confidence that he can be a top 6 center, can you spend money in other places? I still think you need to go out and trade for a #1 center or get one. But in the, break glass in case of emergency that you don't do that, again, I'm getting so far ahead of things that we're so far. Training camp hasn't even started, but I do think it's important to think about, could this save you down the road? If you could wheel out, Poitras and Zacha in future years. But again, got to have a good training camp first. Got to have a lot of good things, before that. Speaking of training camp, starts this week. It's a big time. It's like Christmas. That's what it is. It's all coming back. Training camp, though, not the biggest story in the NHL right now. That'd be Mike Babcock would be the biggest story in the NHL right now. So it's funny. I was trying to find a way to tweet out the clip of the Dylan's Burger skit from I Think You Should Leave when he's like, give me that. I'm just joking. I'm joking. I'm thinking that's Babcock with did you see the quote that Jarmo Kekalainen said, oh, he asked for my phone too. I didn't, I guess I can see how that's,
man,
bad. Like,
this man is obsessed with taking people's phones. Jesus.
Give me your phone. Let me see. I need to see what's on.
He must have been a menace when Doodle Jump was a thing. Just taking everyone's phone.
Yo, I'm gonna beat your score in Temple Run. Give me that.
Exactly.
Give me that.
No, he would probably sabotage it anyway. He didn't intentionally just run you off the cliff every time. If you didn't back check in the game, there you go. You're done.
Well, it's like when I was younger, when I was really little, my sister used to play Minecraft on her iPad. So one day I just took her iPad one day and I burned everything she created in Minecraft, just lit it on fire.
Nefarious.
So a couple days later, she opened. I was 10 years old. I was a dick, and she a couple days later, she's like, yeah, and so I lost privileges of my own phone and my iPad for quite a while because of it. So I'm wondering if it was pretty funny. That might have been worth it. But again, I'm stunned at the idea. I mean, imagine going in for a job interview and you say, to the guy hiring you, hey, can I just check your phone real quick? I just want to go through your photos. I want to go through your Twitter.
I'm going to throw it on the TV too. That was the best part.
Can I see what your TikTok For You page is?
Yes, exactly.
What kind of videos are you liking?
Right.
But yeah, that's a baffling situation that keeps getting better by the day. I find it hilarious that Columbus, with a roster with a lot of very highly talented young players, went with Mike Babcock as the choice there. So yeah, another team that just can't get out of its own way, which is always fun. But yeah, training camp coming up. We had to crack a few jokes about the Babcock situation. Couldn't not do it. So biggest questions, things that are on our mind entering training camp, and we'll have more in-depth training camp stuff obviously throughout training camp. But I think I'll start with a question, and it's one we've talked about quite a bit, and it's, can Charlie Coyle be a top 6 center? At the start of the offseason when it felt like they were, Bergeron and Krejci were retiring, I kept kind of thinking, I don't know about Coyle. He's never really stuck up there. The production's never been there. But the more I've thought about it, and the more I've looked at point totals and what they would need out of him and playing him with DeBrusk and Marchand for full time, I think he can be. I don't think he's going to light the world on fire, but my guess is he'll be a formidable number 2 center. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's all going to, we talked about this even with Zacha as well. I think it's going to come down to, I think they're both capable in terms of what the task and what the ask is going to be from Jim Montgomery in terms of what those roles are. But I think a lot of it's going to fall on the players around them, the guys on the wing, to really drive play there. And, whether it's Coyle with Marchand and DeBrusk, who, Montgomery has high expectations for him in terms of driving play there. Pastrnak as your top offensive conduit. If you're looking for a way to get Zacha settled in there, putting a 60-goal scorer next to him the whole year probably helps him out quite a bit. I think it'll be a couple of nice primary assists off of just feeding it to him on a one-timer chance. So, but I think for Coyle, yeah, he's a guy that I think took steps last year in terms of really rounding out his game and being a very solid two-way player. He was arguably their defensive MVP up front in terms of the amount of ozone starts that weren't afforded to him, that made it easier for guys like Bergeron and Krejci to get easier starts there on the ice. So if Coyle can keep that up, and he's got a higher or a stronger supporting cast with a guy like Marchand, who's produced with whoever you put out there, DeBrusk, who I think took a big step forward last year, and he's a guy that if he's playing his game, is going to generate grade A chances. Doesn't matter. Again, it's for him. He fit in very well with Marchand and Bergeron, but when DeBrusk's on his game, he's hovering around grade A ice. He's making things happen. If you have a guy like Coyle who also likes to possess the puck, you should be able to generate chances there as well. So, again, I think both Coyle and Zacha have the means to step into. I don't even think that's like you have to view it as the role. It's just like the added minutes, the more featured spot there. But I think it's all going to then come down to whether these guys that are going to be tasked with really driving play offensively can kind of bring them along as well.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And, I think it's going to be sort of the sum of the parts type thing with him. And the other thing is just consistency. People kind of point back to that Florida series when Coyle and Zacha were really strong 1 and 2 down the middle. Can you do it over 82 games? There are going to be stretches of the season where the production is down. My guess is there's going to be some ups and downs to start. I think you'll have, Coyle put up 5 points in 3 games, and then, you might have 2 in 6 or 7 or something like that. But I think what Coyle brings on the defensive end is just so important. And I think, shouldn't be overlooked. I think, when you're evaluating Coyle, I think you also have to judge, if he's getting, which we presume will be the case, a lot of D-zone starts and tough matchups, like the production is not going to be as big as people would hope. But if you're preventing other teams from scoring, it's not bad either.
I kind of view it almost like was Coyle and Zacha. It's almost like the Dolphins with Tua. I think Tua's a pretty solid quarterback, but also the Dolphins have done a good job of surrounding him with elite talent that pulls him along and drags him kind of into this elevated role. And that's not like an indictment saying Tua sucks or these guys aren't capable guys, but when you don't have a guy like a Bergeron or a Krejci, it falls on, I think, you surrounding these guys who are stepping into greater roles to have more talent around them that can make it easier for them as they step into more minutes, more responsibilities. And I think if guys like Pastrnak and Marchand and DeBrusk can deliver, it makes life so much easier for those guys who already have a big ask in front of them going into this season.
It'd be cool if the football team from here decided to
that'd be great
on that.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Exactly.
That'd be really nice. What's a question that you have going into training camp?
Yeah, I think it's going to be just what that bottom 6 is going to look like. I don't think you really have to worry too much about the D-core in terms of how it's made up or the goaltending or anything like that, barring a steep drop in production or anything like that, injuries. But that bottom 6, could not tell you what I think that line's going to look like. I couldn't even tell you what it's going to look like in the first day of camp when we see those guys out there on the ice, right? I think it's going to be fascinating to see how they – not just the personnel, but you have so many guys with different skill sets, right? Like Brent Frederick is different from Lauko, who's different from Lucic, who's different from Geeky, to Heinen, Chason. All those guys have such different skill sets, not even looking
They
at
have their own training camp.
Yeah, exactly. And not even counting the younger players, right? We obviously know the guys who could be fighting for fourth line spots like a McLaughlin or a Beecher or Steen, but could a guy like Merkulov hit, right? Could a guy like Lysell really take a huge step forward? There's so many different twists and turns that, we could probably go through during this training camp in terms of finding the best, 6-man unit there in that bottom 6 grouping. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see just how that continues to develop all year. You have to imagine that the veterans, some of the incumbents have the early advantage there, but we'll see. I mean, again, we've talked about it before, but you told me going into last year's training camp that Lauko is going to make the team out of camp. I've been like, no, I don't know about that. Proved a lot of people wrong and then made the most of it when he's out there. So we'll see if anyone else can hit in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, the only, Lucic is going to be somewhere in there on that fourth line.
I have to imagine.
Feels like. I mean, they have him everywhere. They have him at the Jersey fashion show. They had him at the Patriots game. Which I think that was just his own thing. I don't think he was. I don't think the Bruins like Milan. You have to go to Gillette. I think Lucic 100% wanted to go to Gillette. I think he just loves. I think he'll throw out the first pitch. I think he's just happy to be back. It's funny. Someone said to me the other night, they were like, "I don't care if he's the worst player in the NHL. I'm just happy he's a Bruin again." And it's like, you know what? I can get behind that sentiment. But I'm not saying he is the worst. I'm just saying, they were saying, even if he was the worst, just having him back feels right. I'll go off the board with another question. How does Brad Marchand look? Because again, Marchand was coming off double hip surgery last year. Obviously didn't start until about November. Came back early. But, what's he looking like? How's he fitting with Coyle? How's he doing, post Patrice? He's getting older. I think these are valid things we have to watch with him. Obviously, we expect him to produce. We expect him to be the captain, most likely, all those things. But how's he on the ice? Is he a step behind? Is he with everybody? Is he faster? So I'm very curious to see what he looks like. And sort of, again, it's gonna be hard to tell from training camp. It's kind of something you might get more of in the first 5 to 10 games of the actual season, but curious to see how he looks, how he's feeling, and how he's doing. So that would be one. Do you have any others that are burning?
Yeah, I'd say probably
I have none with the D. I have none on D.
Yeah, my only viewpoint is just how, when you look at just how different, the strengths of this team are. Obviously, it all runs through the defense and the goaltending, but how a guy like Jim Montgomery changes his scheme around. Maybe we looked at last year at how much of a luxury you had, not only the scoring depth up front, but you had, such a layered team structure where you could have guys like Lindholm and McAvoy jump up into the play and impact the game in that regard. Like, Montgomery's going to have to change things around a little bit, not just say that his defense doesn't have the capabilities of doing that, but you just don't have that maybe extra layer in front that can kill plays before they get into the D zone. So how I think him and his coaching staff maybe shifts things around, you can only kind of make do with whatever the roster has out there. And you just don't have the amount of scoring depth or the amount of guys like a Bergeron who is so responsible in their own end that you might have to make some sacrifices, maybe be less aggressive in order to kind of be more of a stingy defense first team, which again, that's going to be the biggest key. If you want to view how this team gets back to playoffs, it's continuing to shut down opposing teams, grind things out, and just find avenues to generate offense. But it's going to, I think, depend on Montgomery and his team kind of tinkering things a little bit of how they approach, especially offensively, and how they protect their own net.
Yep, I completely agree with you. You got to switch things up a bit, and I'm curious to see how that is. Also, Montgomery without Bergeron. How many times last year did we hear, it's like having another coach in the locker room. That coach is gone, Patrice Bergeron. So I'm curious to see how Montgomery is. I'm also curious to see, and this isn't a training camp thing, it's a regular season thing, but how does this team look when they hit the skids? How do they look when they slump? Because it's going to happen. Never happened last year. Never seemed to lose many games in a row last year. But they will this year because they're a hockey team. Every team does. Last year was sort of an outlier. So curious to see that. One other question I have regarding training camp, Fabian Lysell, what does he look like? How is he doing? How is he developing? Does he put up a fight to make this team? Because I think if he is lighting it up in training camp in the preseason, I don't know. Maybe there's something there and they feel that, hey, he'd be a good third line right winger, or, maybe he makes things interesting and kicks Van Riemsdyk out of the top 6 or something. I'm not saying that's going to happen. Me and you are both on the same page on, I think more seasoning for him would be a really good thing. But if he just lights the world on fire in training camp, how does that sort of change their outlook on him? So again, that'd be like my prospect that I want to kind of keep an eye on. I mean, we mentioned Poitras already, but Lysell obviously is the interesting one. And we talked bottom 6 with Beecher and stuff like that. So we'll have more with training camp in the future. And one place is I know there's going to be a lot of training camp content from is with you over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe.
Yeah, we're going to have you covered throughout the long days of training camp. Thank goodness. I think we've all been waiting for days where we almost have too much stuff to talk about. It's finally here. We'll have all of it over at Boston.com. So you can read all of our stuff over there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. And I saw, Connor, your blue check mark is back on Twitter. Ooh.
I heard it. Yeah, I saw that.
Welcome back. Well, I can't say welcome back. But they can say welcome back. The blue check mark.
It's like that little gif of the kid. I think he's at like the spelling bee where all the confetti's falling on him. That's how I feel. Get the blue check mark back. But at what cost? At what cost, Evan?
You've left us peasants. It's ridiculous. You're back on the elite. You're an elitist now, Connor. Sad.
I know myself.
Sad.
I know myself.
Against the working men and women. Anyways, that's been Bruins Beat. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. We're presented by Fanduel. You Bruins Beat listeners, as always, have a great rest of your week.
The CLNS Media Network is powered by Fanduel. Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose.